He earned power by being hurt on purpose. By the time anyone understood his actions, he already owned half the map. That was the truth about Kim Jun-soo. People called him a monster or a prophet. Some called him a demon wearing a boy's face. None of them knew the real answer. He simply refused to play the game according to the design. He walked into pain, like other men walked into a job. He let poison sit in his veins until his body learned to laugh. He stood in front of lightning and asked for more. Every wound served as a doorway. He decided to open every single one of them. None of that made sense yet. We must go back to the beginning in a cramped apartment in Seoul. There lived a man who was already dead in every way. Before becoming Warrior Kim, he was just Jun-soo. He was 28 years old. He had not left his room in 3 days. The screen in front of him provided the only light. He built a character from nothing. He poured 10,000 hours into this tank class account. Arcane Soul was not just a game to him. It was the only place where effort still meant something. In real life, effort meant unpaid hospital bills. He had also lost his part-time job 2 weeks ago. The game had one event left before maintenance. He found a gacha pull that was absurdly rare. Streamers waited years for such a drop. He had exactly one shot at the pull. The system asked for a sacrifice. It required a throwaway character to burn as fuel. He picked the cheapest and most useless slot in his roster. The character was a tutorial tier nobody. He had no class and no stats. The game did not even name the character properly. He hit confirm. The screen flashed white, then his phone rang. He looked away for less than 2 seconds to check the caller. That was long enough. He heard the truck before he felt it. There was no dramatic slow motion. No last thoughts flashed by. There was noise and then nothing. Then he saw a ceiling he did not recognize. Jun-soo opened his eyes again. He stared at cracked plaster. A water stain looked like a country he could not name. His body ached everywhere. He felt a deep bone-level soreness. He tried to sit up. His arms shook from the effort. They were thin and weak. His body did not have the tone he once worked for. A voice in his skull informed him of something impossible. The voice was calm and mechanical. It identified the host body as a disposable tutorial unit. The character had no class and was at level 0. He knew that line. He saw it 100 times on his monitor. He usually fed such characters into crafting recipes. Now the line attached to him. The room was not from his old life. It was a hospital room from the game. The tutorial city was made of grim concrete. Nurses moved like they had stopped caring years ago. Outside the window, a creature climbed a building. The creature had too many limbs. Nobody on the street looked up. He was inside the game. He was living inside it. He wore the body of the weakest character. He had sacrificed this body for a gacha pull. This happened less than a minute before he died. Most people would have panicked. Jun-soo panicked for 4 minutes. Then something colder took over. His brain began to calculate like it did during late-night gaming. He had 10,000 hours in this world. He knew which characters would betray their factions. He knew where secret bosses were hidden. No player had ever beaten these bosses. He knew the entire questline of the coming apocalypse. He had read every leaked patch note and data mined script. He read every piece of lore text. Other players never bothered with these details. He was broke and weak. Debt followed him across dimensions. The tutorial character owed the hospital a massive amount. He held something nobody else possessed. He had complete knowledge of what was coming. Nobody could see his gimmick. The rest of the world scrambled through disasters. They prayed to gods who stopped answering centuries ago. Jun-soo already had the answer key. The game taught him an important lesson earlier. This tutorial body had no fixed class. It had no archetype. There was no ceiling written into the code. Other characters were locked into paths like warrior or mage. They spent the game climbing a specific ladder. His body had none of those limits. It was blank. The body was a vessel. It could take on any trait the system granted. He only needed to find specific conditions to unlock them. Most players never bothered with these conditions. The requirements were buried and obscure. Players sometimes had to fail on purpose. Jun-soo spent hundreds of hours finding these secrets. Now it was survival. He swung his legs off the hospital bed. Pain shot through his shins. It was sharp enough to make him grit his teeth. He remembered this. Small doses of deliberate pain were the first key. A nurse walked past his door without stopping. Nobody cared about a nameless patient with no money. This suited him fine. He needed to disappear for a while. He needed time to test his knowledge. He found a discarded work order. It was for a dungeon cleanup crew. Nobody wanted the job because the pay was low. Survival rates were even worse. In his old life, the posting was a joke. Here, it was exactly what he was looking for. Low-level dungeons often hit a rare mutation trigger. Monsters could spike in difficulty without warning. Most crews avoided those jobs. Junsu walked straight toward the address. The crew barely looked at him twice. 4 men wore mismatched armor. They were unimpressed by the scrawny newcomer. Their leader was a broad man named Suk. He told Junsu to stay in the back. He told him not to die. Junsu nodded and said nothing. He filed away every detail of the group. He needed them alive for the next part. He needed the mutation to happen. The dungeon was a half-collapsed subway tunnel. Phone flashlights provided the only light. Rats the size of dogs scattered. The job was simple on paper. He had to clear the tunnel of monsters. This would allow a mining company to reopen the line. The situation changed when the mutation hit. The rats stopped scattering. They turned all at once. Their eyes flashed red. Their bodies swelled past anything natural. Suk swore and called for a retreat. Junsu did not move. He read about this exact mutation years ago. Standing still during a mutation was a buried condition. It granted a resistance trait. He planted his feet. A mutated rat lunged for his leg. The bite was extremely painful. He screamed as blood soaked his pants. Underneath the pain, a chime sounded in his skull. The sound was small and clean. The condition was met. He acquired the minor vermin resistance trait. The trait was a small reduction in poison damage. It was barely worth mentioning to a veteran. However, it was his first trait. He earned it by choice. He turned a wound into currency. Suk dragged him out of the tunnel. The leader was furious. He called Junsu an idiot. Junsu let him think that. Being underestimated was useful. He would need that mask for a long time. Word about the tutorial class kid spread slowly. People joked about the boy who got bitten on purpose. Junsu ignored the laughter. He kept working the worst jobs. He quietly stacked small traits. He gained a resistance here and a minor boost there. None of it looked impressive. All of it was building towards something. His first real test came from the Dagger Gang. They ran protection rackets in his district. They did not like unaffiliated superhumans on their turf. 3 enforcers cornered him in an alley. They had knives out. They expected an easy shakedown. Junsu recognized the ambush pattern instantly. It matched a side quest from his memory. The quest rewarded players who did not flee. He had never done the quest before. Tonight, he had no choice. The first knife came fast. He twisted to avoid a fatal cut. Blood welled from his forearm. Pain lit up his nerves like static. He fought back clumsily. It was enough. The condition was met. He awakened as a level 1 superhuman. A mana core formed. He acquired the minor iron will trait. A pulse of warmth spread through his ribs. It felt like a second heartbeat. The enforcers backed off when his eyes changed. They saw a faint glow. They did not expect him to be a threat. They ran. He did not chase them yet. He had bigger plans for the Dagger Gang. Rushing in while weak would waste his advantage. He knew their entire hierarchy. In the alley, he met Iron Fist Kim. This scarred boss watched from a rooftop. He was curious about the newcomer. Kim had a reputation for brutality. Junsu knew the man was actually loyal. He was protective of those under his wing. In the original story, Iron Fist Kim died pointlessly. Junsu did not intend to let that happen again. They did not become allies that night. They sized each other up in the alley. Junsu filed the meeting away carefully. He saw the full shape of the board. He heard of the Order of the Old Father a week later. A flyer promised free healing and blessings. Junsu remembered what the baptism actually did. It was a slow poison disguised as a miracle. The ritual marked bodies for later use. Most people never noticed anything wrong until it was too late. He let himself be approached by one of their recruiters outside a food stall. The recruiter was a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes. Her voice was trained to sound trustworthy. She told him the baptism would fix his weak body. It would also free him from the debt collectors who kept calling. She promised him a place in a community that actually cared. It was a good pitch. He imagined it worked on plenty of desperate people in this district. He agreed to it anyway. He did not do this out of desperation. His decision was a matter of calculation. Surviving a failed or resisted baptism was a buried condition he remembered. It was a brutal condition, called divine fever, in the old patch notes. This trait unlock was so punishing that almost no player triggered it on purpose. His knowledge told him the fever nearly killed most who caught it. His knowledge also told him what waited on the other side. Only a rare few lived to see it. The ritual chamber was quiet and candlelit. Priests in white robes filled the room with a low chant. When the water touched his forehead, it burned like acid poured into his skull. He collapsed within seconds. His vision split into fractured light. His whole body convulsed on the stone floor. The priests around him murmured that this reaction was unusual. They feared that this person might not survive the blessing. For 3 days, Junsu burned from the inside. His temperature spiked past anything a normal body should survive. He hallucinated faces from his old life. He heard his mother's voice asking why he never visited. He heard his manager's voice telling him he was fired. All of it tangled together with fire that never seemed to stop. Somewhere in the haze, a small and gentle presence sat with him. This was an aging cleric, later known as Priest Kim. The priest defied the usual practice of leaving failed baptisms to die alone. He stayed by the cot and fed Junsu water. He murmured prayers to a god nobody else in the order still worshipped. On the 4th day, the fever broke. He had met the condition. He unlocked a rare mana circuit called the Ashborn Vein. He also acquired the major fever resistance trait. He woke up feeling lighter and clearer. It felt like something clogged in his chest had finally drained free. Priest Kim looked at him with both awe and disbelief. The priest had watched dozens of failed baptisms end in death. He had never seen someone walk away smiling. Junsu did not smile because he felt lucky. He smiled because the math worked exactly as he predicted. This meant everything else he remembered about this world could work too. He left the chapter house of the order that week. A new circuit hummed under his skin. He added a name to a very short list of people he trusted. Priest Kim did not fully understand what he witnessed. However, the priest understood loyalty when he saw it in actions. Junsu's actions were strange, but they had never once been cruel. The next piece of the puzzle involved both wealth and desperation. Seo Woojin was the heir to a shipping fortune. He had caught divine fever from a legitimate accident. A stray splash from a broken ritual vessel hit him during a corporate event. Unlike Junsu, Woojin had no memory of game mechanics to guide him. He was simply dying a slow death. His family's doctors failed one treatment after another. Junsu found him through a broker named Director Choi. Choi was a mission handler who arranged jobs for superhumans. These people took on the stranger problems of the district. Choi was cautious by nature. The director had survived this line of work for years. He did this by never trusting anyone too quickly. He looked at the thin frame and unimpressive registration sheet of Junsu. He openly doubted Junsu could help the dying man. Junsu did not argue. He simply asked to be taken to the bedside of Woojin. The technique was not magic in the way people assumed. It was a matter of specific and exact memory. He used a healing method buried in an old side quest. This method required a rare herb combination. Most healers dismissed the recipe as folklore. Junsu had memorized the recipe out of pure curiosity years ago. Back then, it was nothing but a footnote in a wiki. He gathered the ingredients from a corner pharmacy. The shop had no idea what it was actually selling. He brewed the herbs exactly as the old text described. The fever of Woojin broke within a single day. Gratitude followed in the form of money. It was more than Junsu had seen in both of his lives. He also gained something he valued more. Once Woojin recovered, he revealed himself to be a skilled swordsman. Woojin had been trained since childhood. He was restless and searching for a purpose beyond the family business. Junsu recognized the game lore behind the man. In the original story, the unchecked ambition of Woojin led to his death. Now, that ambition could be guided early toward a useful path. Director Choi watched the entire recovery unfold with narrowed eyes. He recalculated everything he thought he knew about the unregistered superhuman. He did not fully trust Junsu yet. However, the director stopped underestimating him. In this district, that shift mattered more than trust ever could. This growing usefulness put Choi in danger next. The Dagger Gang was humiliated by a failed shakedown weeks earlier. The gang realized that Jun-soo had connections worth stealing. They decided the easiest way to hurt him was through those around him. They grabbed Choi off the street in broad daylight. They dragged him into their compound. The gang was certain that torturing a broker was a low-risk move. They believed nobody powerful enough would bother avenging him. Jun-soo heard the news from a panicked runner. The kid worked errands for the office of Choi. The runner was breathless and close to tears. In that instant, the calculated calm of Jun-soo cracked completely. He did not think about hidden conditions or buried mechanics. He thought about the careful eyes of Choi. Those eyes softened every time Jun-soo proved himself useful. He thought about a man who chose curiosity instead of turning him away. He went to the compound of the Dagger Gang with explosives. He did not bring a strategy. Word of what happened that night spread through the district quickly. It traveled faster than anything Jun-soo had done before. He did not sneak through the compound. He did not pick off guards one by one. Instead, he blew the front gate open. He walked through the smoke without flinching. Small arms fire aimed his way did not stop him. He worked through every floor with great violence. This unsettled even Iron Fist Kim. By the time Jun-soo reached the basement, the leadership was gone. Choi was chained to a chair. He was bruised and bleeding from a split lip, but he was alive. He looked up at Jun-soo through swollen eyes. The broker said nothing for a long moment. There was no longer a guarded look in his stare. There was only relief, raw and unguarded. Jun-soo cut the ropes himself. His hands were shaking slightly. This was the first genuine tremor his body had shown. He had not felt this way since waking up in this world. The Dagger Gang did not exist by the next morning. Rival crews moved in to claim their territory. Nobody asked too many questions about who left the compound in ruins. Jun-soo let the rumors grow into whatever shape they wanted. He let people call him a monster. They whispered about a nameless superhuman. They spoke of how he wiped out a syndicate for one broker. He knew the truth was smaller and stranger than any rumor. He did not do it because Choi was useful. He did it because he had started caring. He wanted the man to live. That single night changed how the district saw him. It also changed something inside Jun-soo. He was not ready to examine this change too closely yet. He had 10,000 hours of knowledge. This knowledge told him how to survive this world. However, it had not prepared him for this feeling. It hurt to almost lose someone in this place. The apocalypse was still building in the shadows. The order of the Old Father was not finished. Somewhere beneath the district, the saint and the faithful were moving. They were patient and certain. They believed history would repeat as their scriptures promised. Jun-soo did not know how close the collision was. He knew this world had taken much from him. He had no intention of paying that price anymore. He intended to take something back first. His reputation kept growing. He still needed specific traits, and they came slowly. Blowing up a gang compound earned fear. It did not earn resistance to solar radiation. It did not provide the stats needed to fight the order. For that, he needed pain delivered in deliberate doses. No sane person would ever choose this for themselves. He found an opportunity in a research contract. A laboratory was studying mutation containment. They needed a test subject for a high-voltage chamber. They wanted someone expendable whose death would not cause a lawsuit. Most superhumans avoided contracts like that. Jun-soo signed before the recruiter finished reading. The chamber was a squat metal room with copper coils. It was built to simulate storm conditions. These conditions could kill an ox in seconds. The lead scientist was a nervous woman named Dr. Han. She tried talking him out of the test twice. She insisted the voltage settings were not meant for a live subject. Jun-soo told her to run the test anyway. The first jolt threw him against the wall. The impact cracked the plating behind him. His muscles locked and his vision went white. For 1 second, he wondered if he had miscalculated. Then the pain settled into a rhythmic feeling. His new body was learning to translate the energy. He met the condition and acquired the Storm Skin Minor trait. He asked for a second jolt immediately. Dr. Han refused because his heart rate looked wrong. Jun-soo pointed out that his heart rate always looked wrong. His entire existence in this world looked wrong on paper. None of it had killed him yet. She ran the second jolt with her eyes half closed. By the time he left the lab, the trait had leveled twice. The scientists started calling him something other than Subject 7. Dr. Han never learned his real name that day. She learned enough to stop sleeping properly. She was certain she had witnessed something impossible. The solar flare trial came from a different source. A decommissioned military outpost was hosting weapons tests. A corporation wanted to weaponize captured spell scrolls. Jun-soo approached them directly. He offered to serve as a live test target for a small fee. The handlers found the offer strange enough to accept. He stood in an open field without any shields. A technician activated a scroll to simulate a solar flare. Heat hit him first, then a light so bright it turned his vision to static. A wave of force peeled skin from his muscle. Then his resistance traits caught up. The traits started closing the damage quickly. He stood his ground as the energy washed over him. He screamed through most of it. Along the way, he decided that screaming was not a sign of weakness. It was simply an honest sound for an honest amount of pain. The technicians running the test went pale while watching the feed. Several workers stepped back from their monitors to seek distance from the site. He met the necessary condition. He acquired the major trait known as Sunscar Ward. Then, Storm Skin and Sunscar Ward fused together. This fusion created a new trait called Weathered Constitution. The fusion notification caught him off guard. It was a pleasant surprise rather than a planned outcome. He had not known these particular traits could combine. That was the beauty of a blank slate body. Even Jun-soo did not have every answer memorized. He was still discovering things in real time like everyone else. However, he maintained a significant head start. Word spread about the strange volunteer. He was willing to take solar flares to the chest for money. This news reached high corporate circles far above the outpost. Not all of the resulting attention was friendly. The first assassination attempt came 3 weeks later. A sniper waited on a rooftop overlooking a market street. Jun-soo walked through that market most mornings. The sniper worked for a rival corporation. This corporation was annoyed by rumors about Jun-soo. He had been quietly buying patents related to mutations through family connections. These patents conflicted with contracts already promised to others. The trap was not subtle once triggered. A rune etched into the pavement flared to life beneath his boots. A binding spell locked his feet in place. It was meant to hold a target still for a kill shot. Most superhumans caught in that trap would have panicked. They would have wasted precious seconds struggling against the binding. Jun-soo recognized the rune pattern instantly. It was a common and cheap mass-produced trap. People sold them in underground markets to unskilled buyers. He had examined a breakdown of its weakness years ago. He did this out of curiosity about the game systems. He did not pull against the binding. Instead, he pushed a small pulse of mana downward. This pulse used the exact frequency needed to short the anchor point. The trap released half a second before the sniper fired. Jun-soo did not run for cover. He walked calmly toward the building where the shot originated. Above him, the sniper scrambled to reload. The shooter was confused by a target who remained alive. Jun-soo closed the distance across 3 city blocks very quickly. By then, he was already standing behind the sniper on the rooftop. The sniper spun around with his rifle raised. Jun-soo caught the barrel with one hand. He drove his other fist into the man's jaw. The shooter could not even register that his target had moved. The sniper crumpled without firing another shot. Jun-soo left the unconscious man on the roof. He pinned a note to the sniper's jacket. The note listed the corporation that hired him. He wanted the message to be clear to everyone watching. Attempts like this would cost more than they were worth. Despite this, more attempts followed. Corporations rarely learned lessons from a single humiliation. A poisoning attempt occurred several weeks later. The poison was laced into a drink at a business meeting. Jun-soo recognized the taste immediately. It was a rare compound used by a specific assassin guild. He had memorized their catalog because of a boss fight in the game. He drank the entire glass in front of everyone. The color drained from the face of his host. For several minutes, Jun-soo sat perfectly still. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his pulse sounded in his ears. His body tore the poison apart piece by piece. He rebuilt his system from the wreckage. He met the necessary condition. He acquired the major trait called Toxin Breaker. He finished the meeting without further incident. He calmly discussed shipping tariffs with the group. The man who ordered the poisoning sat across the table. This man was visibly unraveling. He realized his plan had given Jun-soo permanent immunity. He had expected a funeral instead of a stronger rival. Stories like that did not stay contained to business circles. The tales spread through the district underworld. People believed that Jun-soo could not be killed. He allowed the myth to grow. This kept lesser threats away from him. He focused on something more important than his survival. He focused on his disciples. He found Baek Soren first. She was in a training yard for corporate fighters. She sparred against 3 opponents and lost. A senior instructor mocked her in front of the class. In the original story, Soren followed a brutal path. She was forced into a military division. The war burned through her talent and her life. Jun-soo watched her pick herself up. She did not complain despite the loss. Her jaw was tight and her eyes burned. The instructor had not extinguished her spirit. He approached her after the session ended. He offered a simple correction to her stance. She had been taught the wrong position from the start. Soren was skeptical of the unregistered stranger. Then, she tried the adjustment. Her next strike landed with twice the force. Training her properly took several weeks. He used a specific sequence of drills. These drills came from a hidden quest in the game. Most players ignored this quest because it was tedious. However, Jun-soo knew better. He knew the true reward for her bloodline talent. The awakening hit her during a sparring match. A surge of power sent her opponent flying. The force cracked the reinforced flooring. She stood in the wreckage and breathed hard. She stared at her hands in disbelief. Soren awakened the Skybreaker star. The instructors who had mocked her went quiet. Jun-soo said nothing about his role in her success. He did not need credit for the transformation. He only needed her to stay alive and strong. He wanted her to follow a new path. Janet came next. Her story was darker than the story of Soren. He found her through the network of Choi. A report described illegal testing on children. This lab operated just outside the district. The report used clinical and bloodless language. Jun-soo reviewed the report twice. He went to the facility alone at night. The interior was worse than the Dagger Gang compound. He saw rows of cold holding cells. Children were strapped to examination tables. Researchers discussed dosages as if they were tuning engines. He found Janet in the 3rd cell. Her wings were clipped short to prevent flight. She stared at the ceiling with empty eyes. He did not farm a trait that night. He did not calculate anything. He tore the facility apart with great violence. He dragged every researcher into the courtyard. He left them tied and screaming for rescue. It took hours for the authorities to arrive. Janet did not speak to him for 3 days. She flinched at every sudden movement. She refused to eat while others were near. Jun-soo did not push her. He stayed nearby and remained patient. One evening, she spoke in a whisper. She asked why he had bothered to save her. She felt useless because she could not fly. He told her that flight was not the only freedom. It took months for her wings to heal. Eventually, she could lift off the ground again. She stood on a rooftop at dawn. Janet laughed for the first time in years. The story of Kay unfolded differently. She was tangled up with a temple cult. They treated her like an asset for a goddess. Jun-soo intervened during her binding ceremony. He disrupted the ritual to give her a choice. She chose to walk away. This decision cost her the protection of the temple. For a while, she lost almost everything. Then, Jun-soo brought her into his circle. She viewed him as a mentor and a brother. He had 4 disciples. Their tragic futures were now rewritten. Jun-soo had not planned to build a family. He only wanted to survive this world. His goals had changed during the difficult trials. Survival and family were now impossible to separate. Iron Fist Kim watched these events from the edges. He remained cautious about trusting Jun-soo. The turning point came during a routine patrol. His crew encountered a dangerous mutation event. The situation should have ended in many deaths. Jun-soo arrived in the middle of the fight. No one had called him for help. He was simply tracking mutations in the area. He saved the crew from certain death. He offered Iron Fist Kim a way to grow stronger. Kim would not have to be a weapon for others. The upgrade process was very brutal. It involved grafts and many mana infusions. Iron Fist Kim screamed for 2 full days. Jun-soo sat with him through the entire ordeal. He showed the same care he gave to Janet. Iron Fist Kim rose from the table. Cybernetic plating was now fused into his muscle. He was stronger than ever before. His loyalty was deeper than any contract. Jun-soo had built the beginnings of an army. This army consisted of people the world abandoned. Somewhere beneath the district, the Order of the Old Father noticed nothing. Their scriptures spoke of a chosen vessel. This instrument would herald the return of their god. They focused their rituals on a strange superhuman. His power increased in ways they could not explain. They wrongly assumed he would be useful. They had no idea what he remembered. He knew the fate their god would bring. He was preparing to stop their prophecy. The story would not end as they expected. The next chapter of Jun-soo's climb did not stay confined to the district for long. Word of a strange superhuman gathering allies started reaching far corners of the world. Some of those corners sat on problems older than the game's tutorial zone. The mutant village came first. Tucked into a valley the Divine Tower had written off years earlier. Its people were not monsters by choice. A contamination leak from an old mana reactor had twisted their bodies generations ago. Children were born with extra limbs and translucent skin. Their bones grew in directions no doctor could correct. The Legion patrolled the valley border but never crossed it. The Legion treated the village like a quarantine zone that still had a pulse. Jun-soo remembered this place from a side quest that nobody finished properly. The reward looked underwhelming next to the effort required. He knew better now. A dormant mana well sat buried beneath the contaminated soil. This well could purify the entire valley if someone survived the trial. The village elder had 4 arms and a rough voice. She did not trust Jun-soo at first. Most outsiders wanted to take things rather than give them. Jun-soo did not argue with her caution. He asked where the deepest contamination pooled. Then he walked toward it without waiting for permission. The trial was not a monster or a puzzle. It was raw and sustained exposure to mana corruption. The corruption seeped into his lungs with every breath. His new resistances slowed the damage. However, they did not stop it. By the second hour, blood started leaking from his nose. His vision swam with static that had nothing to do with light. He kept walking anyway. Eventually, his palm found the well's cracked core. The condition was met. He acquired a major trait called Purifier's Touch. Light spread outward from his hand in a slow wave. The light soaked into the contaminated stone. It threaded through cracks that had poisoned the water for 3 generations. This process was not instant. Full purification would take weeks to finish spreading. However, the elder felt the shift immediately. She felt an easing in the air itself. For the first time, she believed her grandchildren might grow up with healthy bones. She offered Jun-soo the village's oldest treasure in gratitude. This treasure was a cloak woven from ancient fiber. The cloak was resistant to nearly every form of corrosive damage. Jun-soo accepted it with genuine thanks. He valued watching the discarded village get a second chance. The Norse territories presented a different kind of problem. Descendants of old-world faiths clung to fragments of power. These fragments came from gods who had mostly gone silent. Their remaining strength was locked behind trials of worthiness. Jun-soo approached the central shrine with Woojin at his side. The swordsman was eager for a challenge without corporate politics. The trial keeper was an ancient spirit bound to frozen stone. It did not care about raw strength. Instead, the spirit asked riddles wrapped in old poetry. Modern challengers failed because they did not understand the cultural context. Jun-soo had examined translations of these riddles years ago. He answered each one without hesitation. The spirit's weathered expression shifted from suspicion to respect. Meanwhile, Woojin faced the physical trial against an armored Echo. The Echo was a long-dead warrior. Woojin lost the first exchange badly. A strike rattled his sword arm and drove him to one knee. Jun-soo did not step in to help. This part was not his fight to win. Woojin rose anyway with blood dripping from a split brow. He adjusted his stance as Jun-soo had once shown him. This training happened during a quiet session weeks earlier. The second exchange lasted longer. The third ended with Woojin's blade against the Echo's throat. The ancient warrior was finally satisfied. The shrine granted them both boons. Jun-soo walked away with a fragment of old-world lightning. This fragment was bound into his mana core. Woojin walked away with something he valued more. He proved he could win without his family's name or fortune. The river goddess's territory tested something different. She was not hostile, but was deeply exhausted. Her waters were clogged with industrial runoff from mega corporations. These corporations built factories without asking permission. Her priestesses had almost given up hope. Jun-soo spent 3 days diverting waste pipelines by hand. He dug trenches until his arms shook. He refused every offer of rest from the priestesses. They watched him work with growing disbelief. The work was not glamorous. It was not a fight he could win through clever traits. It was just slow and difficult labor. By the 4th day, the river ran clear for the first time in over 10 years. The goddess surfaced long enough to press a blessing into his palm. This blessing was a ward against drowning. The North Pole came last. It nearly killed Jun-soo. Ancient dragons slept beneath the ice there. They guarded a hoard of items too dangerous for the world. Most adventurers who sought them never returned. Jun-soo knew which dragon to approach. The dragon was a cynical creature named Red Dragon. Lore described him as a bitter old soldier. Reaching the lair meant crossing a frozen wasteland. The temperature alone could kill an unprepared superhuman within minutes. Jun-soo did not prepare in the traditional sense. He wore gear meant for temperate climates. He let the cold bite deep into his skin. This was his way of farming a resistance trait. By the time he reached the lair, frostbite claimed 2 fingers. His lips were cracked and bleeding. His breath froze solid in the air. The condition was met. He acquired a major trait called glacial endurance. Red Dragon did not attack immediately. The dragon stared down at the frostbitten intruder. Red Dragon was unimpressed and waited for the man to beg. Jun-soo did not beg. He sat down across from the massive dragon. He started talking about the dragon's forgotten history. He recounted battles the dragon assumed no living creature remembered. These wars were fought centuries ago against a rival wyrm. The dragon's ancient eyes narrowed. He asked how a human could know those details. Jun-soo said he simply remembered things other people had forgotten. They talked for hours. By the time Jun-soo left, his fingers had begun to heal. Red Dragon agreed to a partnership. This was an ally bound by respect rather than force. Jun-soo also found a skeletal drake named Bonehead nearby. The drake had been abandoned by its master centuries earlier. Bonehead was wandering the ice in aimless circles. Jun-soo offered the drake a task worth existing for. He returned with 2 monstrous allies and many blessings. His power now sat well beyond anything the district could challenge. However, none of it happened without cost. His body carried scars now. Faint silver lines crossed his forearms from a sniper. A permanent chill stayed in his fingertips. A tiredness in his bones remained. Jun-soo did not complain about the price. Every scar was proof the price was paid honestly. In an unforgiving world, that mattered to him. Back in the district, Director Choi noticed patterns in his reports. Mana signatures were spiking in places that had been quiet for years. He brought the reports to Jun-soo personally. Jun-soo recognized the pieces of a countdown. The Order of the Old Father was preparing. Somewhere beneath the stone, the saint received confirmation. The scriptures were aligning. Their dead god's return was close. Jun-soo told Choi it was time to prepare for war. Choi did not ask how Jun-soo could be so certain. He simply nodded and started gathering resources. Outside the window, the sky turned a strange shade of red. The red sky held for 3 days. Then the first rift tore open over the coastal district. The world stopped pretending the danger was theoretical. It did not look like an invasion at first. It looked like weather gone wrong. Clouds curdled into shapes that should not exist. Pressure in the air made the ears of ordinary people ring. Then the first specters crawled through. The specters were translucent and hungry. Every emergency channel started screaming the same warning. Jun-soo had been waiting for this exact sky for months. His stomach dropped when it finally arrived. The Legion convened an emergency council within hours. Corporate executives and military commanders crammed into a single reinforced chamber. They argued over jurisdiction while 3 more rifts opened in 3 more cities. Jun-soo was not invited to that meeting. He had not held a rank the council recognized as worth listening to. Director Choi got him through the door anyway. Choi called in every favor he had built over many months. He watched a strange tutorial class superhuman prove smarter than people who outranked him. The council argument died the moment Jun-soo spoke. He did not raise his voice. He simply listed the cities the order would target next. Jun-soo explained the specific order and the reasons why. His details matched classified intelligence reports the council had not finished processing yet. Nobody asked how he knew. Desperation made people incurious in ways calm prosperity never did. By the end of that meeting, Jun-soo held a title. He had never asked for it and did not particularly want it. He became the Supreme Commander of the Unified Defense Forces. This position stitched together corporate militias and Legion regulars. For the first time, independent superhumans joined a single chain of command. Jun-soo accepted the role because he understood something the generals did not. This war was not winnable through conventional tactics. It required someone willing to walk directly into the fire. The situation needed a leader to drag victory out by its throat. His disciples stood beside him when the first major offensive launched 3 days later. Soren took point on aerial defense. Her awakened power tore through waves of specters with great precision. Even veteran pilots stopped questioning her age. Woojin commanded a ground unit with steady discipline. He had shown this same focus at the North Shrine. His blade work was sharper now. Months of real consequence seasoned his skills more than sparring matches ever could. Janet flew reconnaissance across the battlefield. Her once clipped wings carried her over enemy lines with freedom. This new ability occasionally brought tears to her eyes mid-flight. Kay moved through enemy formations like a blade given human shape. She dismantled entire squads with speed. No one registered her presence before she had already engaged them. Iron Fist Kim commanded his own unit of upgraded fighters. These cyborg-enhanced veterans followed him without hesitation. They entered engagements that would have broken lesser soldiers. Red Dragon and Bonehead provided unexpected aerial superiority. An ancient Wyrm and a skeletal drake tore through enemy air support. Their ferocity made Order commanders reconsider their battle plans during the fight. The Slaughter Empress led the first major counteroffensive from the Order. Her reputation preceded her by decades. She was credited with atrocities across 3 different territories long ago. She commanded her forces from the front lines. The Empress waded through defensive lines with a legendary blade. The weapon never needed sharpening because nothing it touched survived. Jun-soo met her on the outskirts of a burning refinery. The sky above was thick with smoke and specter wings. Casualties from both sides already made the ground slick. The Empress looked him over with open contempt. She was unimpressed by a supreme commander who looked so young. She told her honor guard that this fight would be brief. The battle ended quickly. However, it did not go in the direction she expected. Jun-soo had studied her fighting style years earlier. He remembered her as a boss encounter in a raid dungeon. Most players considered her a difficulty spike that was too steep to clear. Jun-soo knew her opening pattern. He recognized the specific tell in her shoulder before a strike. He knew her guard dropped for exactly 1.5 seconds. The Empress swung her blade. Jun-soo did not dodge in the direction her instincts expected. He let the blade graze his ribs. He accepted a wound that would have ended a lesser fighter. This sacrifice bought him the half-second he needed to close the distance. Her weight was still committed to the follow-through of her strike. His fist connected with her jaw hard enough to crack bone. The Slaughter Empress staggered as blood ran from her mouth. Disbelief flooded features that had not registered surprise in years. She had killed superhumans who were stronger than this commander on paper. None of them had known exactly how she moved. The fight that followed was not clean or elegant. Jun-soo took hit after hit. Each wound fed traits he would analyze later. He bought time and resistance in equal measure. The Empress grew increasingly desperate against an opponent who refused to fall. When she finally dropped, she knelt in refinery ash. Her weapon lay shattered beside her. The honor guard had already fled the field. Jun-soo did not kill her outright. He left that decision to the Legion Tribunal. Director Choi had compiled years of evidence regarding her crimes. Jun-soo decided that justice delivered by others mattered in this war. Word of the defeat of the Empress spread through the Order fast. This news cracked morale in cities that believed she was invincible. The Demon Lord took her fall personally. He viewed it as an opportunity to seize control of her forces. The Demon Lord was worse than the Empress had ever been. She fought with efficiency, but he fought for spectacle. He staged battles designed to break morale through horror. His forces overran 2 districts in a single week. The Order broadcasted footage of the slaughter to every available screen. This psychological weapon aimed to terrify civilians who had never fought. Jun-soo intercepted him personally at a mountain pass. This location offered no easy retreat for either side. The Demon Lord greeted him with genuine delight. He wanted to face the commander whose reports sounded like fiction. This fight cost more than the previous battle. The Demon Lord fought with weapons from a dozen different disciplines. He switched styles mid-combat to prevent Jun-soo from adapting. Jun-soo took damage he had not planned for. A curse-laced strike ate through his weathered constitution trait. The wound along his side refused to close through normal healing. For the first time, Jun-soo doubted his survival. He thought of the trust in the eyes of Director Choi. He remembered Janet learning to fly again at dawn. He thought of Sarin refusing to accept the fate assigned to her. He was no longer fighting for a title or a war. He fought because many people depended on this future. The curse wound became the trigger he needed. The agony was sharp enough to force a desperate gamble. A specific condition was met within his system. He fused the Toxin Breaker and Purifier touch traits. This created a major curse ward. The fusion burned through his system like ice water. It purged the curse before it could spread further. This bought him the opening he needed. He closed the gap the Demon Lord had maintained. The final exchange lasted only seconds. Jun-soo drove a fragment of lightning into the chest of the Demon Lord. This mana came from the trial at the Norse Shrine. The strike did not just wound his enemy. It unraveled the curses layered across the body of the Demon Lord. Decades of dark ritual work collapsed in a single violent instant. The Demon Lord fell without a final speech. He did not have the dramatic last stand he had promised. The mountain pass went quiet except for the wind. Distant Order forces retreated because they had no leader left. News of both defeats reached the Saint within hours. Messengers were too frightened to soften the details. The Saint received the reports with unsettling calm. He was unbothered by the loss of his two most valuable commanders. His scriptures had never promised an easy war. They only promised an inevitable ending. The loss of two lieutenants did not change his certainty. Preparations continued exactly as planned beneath the central temple. A chamber was built to host the return of a dead god. The Saint had already identified a specific soul for this purpose. He had been watching the rise of Jun-soo with interest. The scriptures spoke of a magnificent soul. Only such a soul could serve as the perfect vessel. Every battle Jun-soo won confirmed the suspicions of the Saint. Every trait Jun-soo stacked made him more valuable. The Order did not need to defeat him in war. They simply needed to capture him. Jun-soo returned from the mountain pass victorious. His wounds were healing as his disciples celebrated. The war finally seemed to turn in favor of humanity. He allowed himself one night of relief. He sat with Choi and his disciples for a meal. It felt almost normal despite the world burning around them. He did not know about the trap beneath the temple. A plan built around his own strength was waiting for him. The trap sprang 3 nights later. Jun-soo had gone alone to investigate a tip. Choi had heard rumors about a hidden chapter house. Jun-soo thought it was a low-risk errand. The chapter house was empty when he arrived. He noticed the wrongness half a second too late. The seal beneath his feet ignited with ancient script. Gold and black light swallowed the entire building. A collapsing pocket of space folded around him like a fist. Jun-soo fought against the pull with every trait. Weathered constitution burned through mana reserves. Storm skin sparked uselessly against the seal. None of it mattered against the ritual of the Saint. The trap was built to swallow strength rather than fight it. Jun-soo woke on featureless stone. No visible source lit the area. It was silent in a way that pressed against his ears. The Saint stood a short distance away, in bone-colored robes. His face was calm and certain. He did not gloat. The Saint looked at Jun-soo like a rare specimen finally secured. The Saint told Jun-soo that this war was never about soldiers. He spoke without any malice in his voice. The Saint only needed patience and a worthy vessel. This vessel would carry his god back home. Jun-soo asked why the Saint thought a vessel could be taken. He believed such things should be earned instead. The Saint responded by raising one hand. Suddenly, the stone beneath them both split open. This opening led to something far worse than the previous void. That void had swallowed the entire chapter house. This hell dimension did not contain fire or screaming. Old stories often described such places with those features. Instead, this place was much quieter. This silence made the dimension feel even crueler. Junsu fell through layers of gray light. He landed on ground that looked like a hospital room. He remembered waking up there on his first day. However, small and unsettling details felt wrong. The water stain on the ceiling looked like a screaming face. The window looked out onto nothing at all. The system identified the environment as a psychological containment field. It estimated the subjective duration as indefinite. The system voice usually sounded clinical. However, this time it carried a tone of concern. Junsu understood the situation immediately. This prison was built from time itself. It folded and stretched until a single night felt like decades. He once read about this specific mechanic. Lore described an ancient artifact built by the Order. The founders used it to break resistant minds. This artifact was incredibly effective. The developers almost removed it from the game for being too dark. Most people who entered this space lost their sanity. The human mind could not survive millions of hours of isolation. This place created doubt and manufactured despair. Junsu sat down on the hospital bed. He forced himself to breathe slowly. He refused to let panic control him during this time. He was not alone for very long. A small figure appeared during the first week. The girl looked no older than 7 years old. She curled against the wall with her knees to her chest. Her eyes showed that she no longer expected any comfort. He learned her story through months of quiet conversation. She was a failed experiment from the Order. They sacrificed her to this ritual decades ago. Her physical body died in the real world long ago. Her mind remained trapped here alone for many years. Junsu did not try to fix her quickly. He sat with her just as Priest Kim once did. He also remembered sitting with Janet in the laboratory. He shared stories about the district and the disciples. These disciples had once been broken but found their way back. He allowed the girl to set the pace. Weeks became months, and months became years. This subjective time would drive most minds to madness. Junsu felt the mental strain as well. Memories of his old life blurred with his new life. Hospital bills and manicures tangled together in his dreams. These dreams no longer felt entirely like his own. The iron will trait triggered automatically. It reached the auto-reset threshold. This notification arrived quietly and reset his mind. This prevented his sanity from snapping completely. He realized that this specific trait saved his life. He had farmed it during a gang ambush months ago. That event felt like it happened in another lifetime. The girl started speaking in full sentences. Her voice carried less fear over time. Eventually, she told him her name. This was the first personal detail she had shared. Junsu repeated her name gently and with great care. During the 15th subjective year, the girl finally smiled. It was a small and unpracticed expression. Her face had forgotten how those muscles worked. That was when the memories began. They arrived with great force. A flood of images and sensations filled his mind. These memories did not belong to his current life. He saw a mountain monastery lit by lanterns. He saw a blade moving with perfect refinement. This combat looked like beautiful calligraphy in motion. Soldiers across many eras spoke a specific title with terror. The title was Heavenly Demon. This name felt like a memory, rather than something new. This identity had slept within his soul for a long time. It existed before he ever played the Arcane Soul game. He understood that his soul had lived many previous lives. He accumulated strength and scars across many cycles. His current body was not a random assignment. The system recognized the power of the soul within him. The gods previously praised his magnificent temperament. They were not simply flattering a stranger. Instead, they recognized an ancient being in a new body. The girl watched these memories with patient understanding. She was not frightened by his sudden confusion. She told him that she always sensed his age. He did not belong to just one lifetime. Junsu handled these memories with great care. He remained cautious and deliberate. He did not let this new identity overwrite his own. The heavenly demon became another part of his large soul. The surrounding stone began to crack. This did not happen because of Junsu. The girl used her healed mind to push back. She reached for his hand with a steady grip. She told him she was finally ready to leave. Light broke through the gray in jagged lines. The ancient architecture of the containment field began to buckle. It had never faced such strong resistance before. Now, two minds refused to break. Junsu felt the outside world pulling him back. Gravity and sound returned to his senses. The dimension began to shatter entirely. The girl tightened her hand around his as a thank you. They had kept each other sane in a dark place. He opened his eyes in a deep stone chamber. The saint stood exactly where he was before. However, the calendar showed that much time had passed. The calm expression of the saint finally cracked. He looked uncertain for the first time. No person had ever survived that containment field. Junsu walked out smiling and completely sane. He rolled his shoulders. He felt a vast and ancient power within him. This feeling was different from any previous trait. This power finally belonged only to him. The necessary conditions were met. All acquired traits began to fuse together. This created a new trait called World. The saint took a step backward in fear. The air in the chamber seemed to bend. His decades of study and prophecy were now failing. Reality no longer matched his predictions. The saint had not captured a vessel for his god. Instead, he pushed a sleeping storm to wake up. The saint did not run away. He could not process this new reality. He watched Junsu transform into something new. His oldest texts never described such a being. The world trait settled into his body. All his previous traits wove together. This included vermin resistance and storm skin. He also felt fever resistance and toxin breaker. These traits moved through him like a single current. The memory of the heavenly demon sat beneath everything. It folded into the fusion with his other traits. His ancient soul gave weight to his new body. The saint asked what Junsu had become. Junsu told him the truth. He was the sum of every wound he survived. He was the protector of those he saved. This answer did not fit the saint's scripture. The saint reached for the bone shard artifact. He tried to activate the containment field again. The seal flared beneath the feet of Junsu. However, this time the seal simply broke. Light spread out from the failed ritual. The ancient chains of the artifact snapped. The world trait easily absorbed the attack. The bone shard cracked and shattered into pieces. The saint stared at the ruined artifact in shock. He had built his life on his scripture. He sacrificed many people for his beliefs. Now, his plan fell apart in 1 minute. The chosen vessel would not serve his god. The saint remained frozen as reality changed around him. Junsu did not attack immediately. He gave the saint one long moment to understand exactly what had happened. This was the same courtesy he would have wanted for himself. He stood before the man and his collapsing certainty. Then he moved. The fight that followed did not resemble the brutal battles against the Slaughter Empress or the Demon Lord. Those fights were earned through pain and calculated risk. Traits were farmed one agonizing condition at a time. This fight felt different and cleaner. Power finally matched intention without the previous gaps that defined every struggle. Junsu crossed the chamber in a single stride. This movement should have been physically impossible. He caught the desperate counterattack of the saint in one open palm. The impact felt like faint pressure against his skin. His skin no longer remembered what such pain felt like. The next words of the saint were not threats. Instead, they were rapid and increasingly desperate questions. He asked what the return of his god would even mean now. He wondered if decades of preparation were simply wasted. The saint feared he was a vessel that refused to be claimed. Junsu answered him honestly. He told the saint that the dead god beneath the temple would stay dead. The apocalypse the order engineered was no longer a prophecy. It was just a plan built by people. People were also capable of stopping this plan. The final blow was not dramatic. Junsu simply pressed one hand against the chest of the saint. He unwound the tangled ritual magic, keeping the borrowed vitality of the man intact. This was the same corrupted longevity spell that granted him a long life. Age caught up with him all at once. Decades collapsed into seconds. The proud and unshakable composure of the saint finally cracked. He looked genuinely afraid for the first time. However, he did not die from the blow itself. He simply stopped being able to hold his scripture together. The man collapsed to his knees in the wreckage of his own temple. He was an old and ordinary man. He was surrounded by the ruins of everything he had built. The tribunal of the Legion took custody of him within the hour. They were alerted when the mana signature of Junsu spiked high. Sensors 3 districts away registered the massive energy. Choi arrived personally with every disciple. They had spent several days searching frantically for their missing commander. They were unaware that hours in their world were years inside the containment field. Sauron reached him first. Relief cracked through her usual composure. She confirmed with her own eyes that he was standing there. He was whole and breathing. The hand of Wu Jin found his shoulder without a word. He gripped tight enough to communicate everything he was not saying out loud. Janet hovered close while her wings flexed anxiously. Kay stood just behind her and remained quiet and watchful. This was her usual way after a crisis passed. Iron Fist Kim simply nodded once. This gesture carried more weight than any speech. Junsu let himself feel that relief too. Several long minutes passed before the weight of unresolved things returned. He felt the burden settle back onto his shoulders. He reached a new level threshold of Superhuman Level 9. His class designation was now Constellation Tier. The notification arrived quiet and understated. It felt almost anticlimactic after everything he had survived. Junsu had expected some grand system acknowledgement. He expected fanfare matching the scale of his survival. Instead, the message appeared like every other notification. It was clinical and brief. The system was indifferent to the human cost behind the number. That felt right to him somehow. The number had never been the point. News of the fall of the saint spread within days. This news scattered leadership structures. These structures depended entirely on the certainty of the saint. Some cells surrendered outright. Their fighters were exhausted by a war they never fully believed in. They only followed through fear of their own commanders. Other cells fractured into smaller and desperate factions. They remained dangerous but were no longer coordinated. They could not execute an apocalypse on a massive scale. The war did not end instantly. Mop-up operations stretched across several weeks. The unified command of Junsu hunted the last significant cult strongholds. Rebuilding efforts began in the districts the earlier fighting had devastated. He fought less personally during those weeks. He trusted Sarin and Wujin to lead the engagements. Months earlier, he would have handled these tasks alone. This was a quiet acknowledgement that the war was not his to win alone. The scripture of the order was wrong about a lone chosen vessel. The mutant village elder sent word during that stretch. Her valley was now fully purified. The twisted bloodline was finally free to grow. Children would no longer inherit generations of contaminated bone. Meanwhile, Red Dragon and Bonehead patrolled the northern skies. Those skies no longer needed patrolling so urgently. The old Wyrm discovered he preferred having a purpose. This was a surprise after centuries of isolation. Priest Kim found his own quiet elevation during the final weeks of the war. He was the aging cleric who sat with Junsu. He had helped Junsu through the divine fever. The forgotten god he served faithfully finally stirred. This presence was faint but unmistakable. The god recognized a devotion that had never once wavered. This loyalty remained even when the god had gone silent. Junsu watched the humble ascension of Priest Kim to apostle. He felt something close to pride. He was glad such loyalty had not gone unanswered forever. Additionally, the network of Director Choi expanded into formal infrastructure. He was no longer just a mission broker. He became a coordinator for corporations and the Legion Command. Independent superhuman factions learned to trust his judgment. He consistently proved himself right through many months. He never once asked Junsu for public credit. He did not need to. Everyone who mattered knew who built the network. They knew whose instincts had won this war. A formal ceremony followed weeks later. It was held in the rebuilt central plaza of the district. Crowds gathered to watch the official recognition. Rumors had been circulating for many months. Corporate executives who once dismissed him now competed for his attention. A wealthy heiress wanted to secure an alliance through marriage. She made her interest known with directness. There was little room for misinterpretation. Junsu declined politely and without cruelty. He explained he had no interest in a bond built on strategic advantage. He wanted a genuine connection instead. The heiress took the rejection with more grace than he expected. However, gossip networks spent weeks speculating about his choice. People wondered what kind of person could turn down such an offer. The truth was simpler than anyone assumed. He had already found the loyalty that mattered to him. This was built slowly across months of shared danger. These bonds had nothing to do with strategic advantage. He saw the unguarded eyes of Choi. Iron Fist Kim showed steady and wordless respect. 4 disciples had once been written into tragedy. Instead, they found their way into a family. He was not interested in trading them for a convenient marriage. Junsu stood at the ceremony podium. His level 9 title was formally recognized by every faction. He thought less about the war he had survived. He thought more about the war still waiting somewhere ahead. The apocalypse of the Order was only the first test. This was episode 3 of a story he once played. Back then the stakes belonged to a character. Now he lived inside this body. He had cleared the challenge. He barely survived at points and paid a high cost. But he had cleared it. Somewhere ahead sat threats he only partially understood. His 10,000 hours of gameplay offered few clues. He only knew of data-mined fragments and unconfirmed rumors. The true apocalypse still waited on the horizon. He could not yet see it clearly. However, he was not afraid of that horizon anymore. Months earlier he was weak and broke. He was buried under debt in a body he had not chosen. He had built something since then. He had allies who would bleed for him. He would bleed for his disciples in return. Traits were stacked deep from a lifetime of accumulated strength. His soul had survived far longer than a single human lifespan. It was patient and ancient beneath his new life. That evening, the ceremony crowds finally dispersed. Junsu found himself on a rooftop. He overlooked the district where he first woke up. He was once weak and disposable. That was several lifetimes ago. Sarin found him there first. She settled beside him without a word. They shared the comfortable silence of people who belong together. Woojin joined them next, and then Janet. She perched on the ledge with her wings folded. Kay stood quiet and watchful as always. Iron Fist Kim leaned against the rooftop edge a short distance away. He crossed his arms and remained present. Choi arrived last and was out of breath from the stairs. He complained about the elevators that never worked. Nobody laughed particularly hard at the joke. Everybody smiled anyway. Junsu looked out over the district. Most residents did not understand they had survived an apocalypse. He thought about how far this body had carried him. He remembered the cracked ceiling and the unfamiliar mana core. He had stacked traits by choosing immense pain. No sane person would choose that path. He built an army from people the world had given up on. He walked into a prison built to break minds. He walked back out sane. He carried the memory of an ancient soul. He also carried everything he had earned on his own. Level 9 was not an ending. He had known that since long before the ceremony. It was simply proof that his sacrifices had worked. A broken and indebted nobody could climb far enough to matter. He did it one deliberate wound at a time. The true endgame of the world continued preparing itself. It had no concern for his current readiness. Junsu sat with his family on the quiet rooftop. He was not dreading the horizon. He had farmed his way through worse situations. He would farm his way through whatever came next too. The traits were still out there waiting. He intended to collect every single one of them.